Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. And as part of the KLF Deep Dive, I'm here with Ted Trafford. And Ted is the guru on clinical research, coming from the guru of clinical research was Dan Safera. It's kind of fun to have another version of the same conversation. I had a conversation with Ted not that long ago, but before SOS. And at SOS, we discussed all these new things that are going on for new sites. And Ted, when I got back, was like, you know what? We need to talk about new sites and new PIs. So it was a great opportunity to have this conversation. But before I get started, Ted, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to do this and look forward to chatting with you. So I appreciate it.
And
So
yeah,
no, go ahead.
no, tell us about yourself, though. But
Yeah,
thank you. You're
okay.
welcome, and glad to have you on.
So I guess first and foremost, I describe myself as a really proud husband and dad, and there's nothing I love better than spending time with my family. I've been working in clinical trials for 30 years. It'll be 31 in June. And all of that time has been spent on the site side. I started as a research assistant and study coordinator, and then was managing director of the company Probity Medical Research for over 20 years. And now I'm the director of business development. And in my spare time, I love to write about clinical trial issues and solutions. And I'm co-host of a podcast called Innovating Clinical Trials. And then when I'm not involved in clinical research, I will be found lying in the mud and the muck, trying to be a wildlife photographer and capture, some elusive image of an animal or bird. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Ted, you're being far too dismissive about your own accomplishments. If you see the pictures behind Ted, he took those pictures.
Yeah,
That antelope, I want to say, is gorgeous.
Deer,
And
white-tailed deer. Yeah.
White-tailed deer. Okay, I thought the horns. Okay, I don't know the difference, to be completely fair.
That's all right.
White-tailed deer. And the picture on the right-hand side, which you can't see, is a duck, but it's absolutely fascinating. So kudos for all of those winnings, Ted. It also speaks to the fact that we all need a little bit of balance.
Oh yeah.
And Ted, this is apparently being in the muck is part of your balance.
It absolutely is.
So I love that. And as we start talking about that, I do want to point out, in case those people who couldn't tell, he did say a boat.
Yeah.
Which really tells us that he is one of our northern neighbors.
Yeah.
And if President Trump had his way, he would be one of us.
The 51st. Yeah.
51st. I also want to say happy anniversary for the 30th year. You said that you've been doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Kudos to you. You're now leading biz dev. So tell me, Ted, how big is your site network right now?
So Probity Medical Research is a clinical trial site administrative support company, and we have 75 sites across 4 countries. We're in the US, Canada, Australia, and Chile.
That's an interesting mix. So I'm with you on US, Canada. Australia is pushing it. Why Australia? And then Chile just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so it's really interesting how these things develop, and it really comes down to opportunities with really good people. And people are, the basis for clinical research. And when you find good people, then you figure out how to make it happen. So, we were introduced to one physician in Australia, and we had that one physician introduce us to a bunch of others, and we went in and helped set up a bunch of sites that were doing, maybe one study a year, and just help them ramp up. And then Chile, again, good people. Our lead investigator down in Chile is a dermatologist and came and did a fellowship actually with our president, Dr. Kim Papp. And that's how we got connected with him. He went back to Chile, started his practice, and a few years later said, "Hey, I want to do clinical trials." And then we're off and running.
So my experience with Australia tends to be that they're really, really good for phase one research. The incentives and the price points make it much more complicated for phases 2 and 3. They just simply don't have the people. What has been your experience?
So our experience has actually been amazing.
Oh, tell us more.
Um, well, there's really interesting things about Australia. So one of the benefits of doing studies in Australia is that they have uh, a very large central IRB called
Mhm.
Bellberry, and they make things very straightforward for sites that are community based to do clinical trials. Second thing is they have a standard countrywide clinical trial agreement. And so to negotiate contracts in Australia for Australian sites is really straightforward. The bulk of the agreement is set, and then there's just basically a couple of schedules where you have to work out the payment details, negotiate the budget, and but it makes it really, really straightforward. They have really good clinicians in Australia, so there's a lot of really good advantages to doing studies there, and we've been there since 2011.
Now, that, that's interesting to me because my understanding of Australian law tends to be, especially because they've been Australia's been very heavy into the mining world, and that's where they get a lot of their money from. And they're sort of trying to diversify out of it right now, going, we can't just be the mining capital of the world, uranium and the like. So life sciences is one of the areas they're trying to focus on right now. And but but I think that between the no one's questioning the quality of the research, as far as I know, but it does tend to be the minimum wages cause wage inflation in many cases, and IP and data becomes more complicated depending on what you're going to do with it. This becomes even more complicated when you're using U.S. assets because I would imagine that when you are moving data out of Australia, um, ownership of that data becomes more complicated. And then moving IP into Australia, what you pull out becomes even more complicated. And Australia tries to incentivize you staying there,
Yeah.
but sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. So walk me through that analysis on how sponsors, what value sponsors see in Australia, and how that sort of plays itself out.
So I think there's, first of all, the tax credit that makes it attractive. There's really good clinicians in Australia.
Hmm.
They recruit fairly well. It really depends on the reimbursement for approved medications. That has a big impact on the ability to recruit. So you really have to do your due diligence. But we've seen a lot of interest, especially early phase in Australia. But when we're doing phase 3 studies in the US and Canada, Australia is usually a country doing them as well. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. I haven't heard of the hurdles that, and I'm not an expert
Sure.
on the law side of things, but yeah, no, our experience has been really positive.
Very interesting. Because my experience again is more people will do a lot of the um, what are they called? The bridging studies to get into
Okay.
Australia, which makes sense because you'll do the studies in typically the U.S., Canada, maybe you'll do Europe if you're nowadays Europe is having its own issues,
Yeah.
but um, and then you used to aim not that long ago for India. Well, not India anymore either, but China and maybe Brazil. But China has become a little bit more toxic to work with from the present government standpoint with the Biosecure Act and with the bulk data rule. Um, so it's becoming a question of how do you do your studies.
Mhm.
Um, so bringing it all back, you're saying Australia sort of No one's questioning the tax credits. No one's questioning the reimbursement, the fact that their recruitment. I find it fascinating because they simply don't have the population to support a phase 3 study in many cases, unless you're talking about something like diabetes, where everyone has a population. Can't really go wrong with diabetes study or weight loss study, which is
Yeah.
the study du jour right now.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, as far as being one of the countries in a phase 3, we see them in most of the studies that we're doing. Now, we do a lot of work in dermatology,
Mm.
and our sites in Australia are dermatology sites.
Mm.
And so, yeah, we have a really positive experience there. And yeah, haven't encountered yet some of the challenges, but a lot of those may happen behind the doors that we're not involved with.
Yeah.
Those discussions, because I work on the site side, not the
Right.
the sponsor side. So we're not always privy to all those details.
um, do you, and you work, you said, with the smaller sites, so you're not even seeing this at the AMC level, if you will, where some of these
Yeah, we don't work with any large institutional sites. All of our sites are, so when you say smaller, we still have sites that are doing 60 clinical trials, so they're
Wow.
busy sites.
Yeah.
So, but we work with a range of sites who, are just starting in clinical trials, to sites that have been doing clinical trials for 30 years. So it's a really big mix within our group.
Very interesting. I mean, Chile to me is virgin territory, so I don't even know where to start beginning asking questions. But you actually
It's
said
okay.
today would be a good conversation for you to have because you had some questions and comments about new sites coming on and new sponsors coming on. I'd love to talk to you about that. What are you seeing as trends that are keeping sites and sponsors awake right now?
Oh, so that's interesting. So before we dive into that, I want to tell you a story.
Please,
Can I tell you a story?
please.
Okay. So it's about my buddies.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of buddies, and we get together pretty regularly and been through quite a bit together. And so we are like brutally honest with each other, to the point where it's almost become a competition, where we're
Okay.
telling stories about the dumb, stupid stuff we've done.
Hmm.
So, for example, recently my tractor broke down and I was trying to fix it, and I over torqued one of the bolts and snapped the head off, and so made the problem much worse than it was. And
That's
actually,
not a
most
problem I hear about very often. My tractor broke down is not something that comes up often in my
yeah,
world.
yeah,
But go
yeah.
on.
So yeah, so one of my buddies, we say he's the undisputed president of our losers club, and he just has yeah, his wife named the club, because we're constantly like, what loser study or what loser story are you coming with today? And yeah, the one guy we say is the president because he has the most stories. And so we got into a discussion just recently about the Winter Olympics. And I don't know, are you a fan of the Winter Olympics? Did you watch it?
I did not watch it. I'm more of a participate than a watch person.
Okay. Okay.
Talk me
So,
through. Yeah.
so in the Winter Olympics, he was adamant that he could compete and finish multiple events.
Oh,
And
I
you
believe
think
that.
you
I've
think
never
so?
played any of the sports. I guarantee you, I will rank in all of them. Why wouldn't I?
You thi- yeah. So we had a bit of a disagreement over this, and so we started discussing some of the sports. And so curling, granted, he could throw a rock down the rink and do curling.
Let's be clear.
But
Curling's not a sport.
well, it is in the Olympics. So um, hockey, he can
That's a
skate,
sport.
but
Yeah.
I think he'd end up in a coma after the first body check. Like seriously, those guys are huge.
Yeah.
Speed skating, I think he'd fall and cut himself. Ski jumping, end up in a coma. Cross country skiing, coma. Bobsled, coma. But one sport he was confident about: ski cross. Have you ever seen ski cross?
I assume it's going across on skis.
So you're going down the mountain,
Right.
but you're competing head to head with three other people. So
Oh,
you're going around the gates, over the jumps,
right.
bumping into them, and
Oh,
first person across the finish line last.
now that sounds fun.
It it's fun to watch. Like I love watching it.
Yeah.
He thinks he'd be able to make it down the mountain. And so we ended up breakfast not resolving the issue. But I can tell you, like, my buddies are the best, but I don't think you're going to see them competing at the next Winter Olympics. And that's the thing about the Olympics. Nobody just shows up and competes. There's intense preparation that has to happen. And that's where this comes full circle to clinical trials. When you talk about new sites wanting to get involved, new investigators wanting to get involved in clinical research, there is a ton of preparation that needs to happen in order to do it well, get started, land studies, and then execute that first trial.
Mhm.
And so I saw this post on LinkedIn. Someone had posted that they didn't understand why more physicians weren't getting involved in clinical trials, that there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't very difficult to get started, that they kind of needed minimum things. And I really disagreed with that post, because I just see all the barriers that we put up to physicians or sites that want to get started in clinical trials. So that's kind of what I wanted to dig in today. Is some of those barriers, some of the things from your perspective as far as risk goes, legal implications, and because I think we don't make it easy, and I think we've got a lot of work to do if we're actually going to make progress on this.
I agree. So, 3 different comments.
Sure.
So the first one was, you're talking about the president of the Losers Club.
Yeah.
I swear I'm not as big a Seinfeld fan as I'm making myself out to be. But do you remember that scene from Seinfeld where George is trying to get into this co-op, and it's between him and a guy who was in the Holocaust?
Okay.
George won.
I don't remember that one. I watched Seinfeld, but I don't remember that one.
Where the guy who was in the Holocaust was crying for George at the end of it.
Oh my goodness. We spend more of our time laughing and teasing each other. And I gotta say, like, our president, amazing guy, and kind of guy that if you needed anything, he'd be there. And likewise for him. But he does seem to get himself into some really weird situations.
The other thing that you reminded me of with this, with the Olympics and the fact that everyone wants to participate and they think that they can rank or whatever it is.
Yep.
There used to be a show, I'm going back 10, 15 years, but called Pros versus Joes. Do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah. I remember
That's
that.
basically what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was I think it was usually Basketball Legends, and they were like, it wasn't even like a Jordan. It was like the last guy in the NBA against the best guy on your pickup league.
That's right.
I just destroyed them.
Yeah.
But it's this thinking that you're good because of the small pond you're in until you realize how high that mountain goes.
Yeah.
And how deep the water goes, depending on which analogy you're using. But yeah, so I think that's number one. Number two, you asked a question about what keeps sites, why don't more sponsors come into sites? What are the legal issues? What are the risk issues that prevent that? I think there are a few different ones. There are often the basic ones, your FDA related ones. And those are, I don't want to go to jail, I don't know what I'm doing. And then there'll be always a consultant who comes in and says, I know I can fix that for you. And which is great. And many of them know a lot of the things that they're supposed to be doing. What they don't fully appreciate, in my experience, is the stuff that they don't know. So my experience is a lot of the consultants are more FDA consultants. And that's the viewpoint they have. That's all they can see. So they're talking about we need to have policies and procedures in place, which I 100% agree with. those policies and procedures will tell you how do you onboard a patient, how do you onboard a PI, and this is where they already start going, you know what, we'll just get a PI when we can. Then they'll just learn on the ground as the project starts. Um, and that is a terrible way to do things.
Yeah.
But that sort of happens. What they aren't often thinking about is if I'm a latch on site, how do I stay compliant with HIPAA? And does HIPAA even apply? So that becomes the first question you start getting into this. I have a lot of sites that will go out of their way to say things like, we are compliant with HIPAA. And I think that's a terrible idea. Because if you set up your study right, you may not need to be compliant with HIPAA, not because you shouldn't do all those good things that go along with HIPAA, but the moment you say that you're compliant with HIPAA, you are now held by the FTC to require to be compliant with HIPAA. Which when I did a project 10 years ago on how to do HIPAA compliance, we spent for brand new location. We had a completely different person doing it. I was more of a general counsel, inside counsel role. So it was none of my cost, but the cost of the consultant was about $200,000.
Wow.
And that's just HIPAA.
Yep.
You add in GDPR, which I'm going, why are you working with GDPR? You add in PIPEDA, you add in state laws, and that cost can multiply very quickly. So that's your privacy thought process. You might be also looking at things like fraud issues. So I actually looked at, I think it was like 85, 86 lawsuits and warning letters and 483s, like every single thing I could look at that brought sites into trouble. And the number one issue you'd find is data fraud and data fabrication. And you'd go, that doesn't happen. Here's the bad news. It does.
Wow.
And it doesn't happen because people are evil. It often happens because they had the patient and the patient disappeared, so you're trying to like wing it. Every so often you'll get some really bad ones, and the bad ones are people like blanking on his name. He's actually serving 27 years in jail right now for data fraud in a clinical trial. Protocol violations. Your informed consent's a major issue that sponsors will sue sites based on. I've had patients call me and say, I want to sue a site because they are non-compliant. Or they'll say, I want to sue the sponsor because the site's non-compliant.
Right.
None of which is a great idea. Sponsors will sue sites because these PIs don't know what they're doing and they're wasting money. Or they'll sue a CRO because they fail to oversee what site is doing. Exactly. But there are all of these reasons and more. I mean, the big one I like to talk about is if you're talking about smaller sites, and I'm talking about less than 10, 15 people per site.
Yep.
I could almost bet my money that they're probably illegally set up. So, for example, there is something called the corporate practice of medicine. Have you ever heard of it?
Is that where some of the state laws prohibit non-physicians from owning a practice?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And the fact is that you'll get sites who don't like the fact that I'm raising it. So no one really likes talking about it. They're like, clinical research is different. You go, why is it different? And I'd say most states, and it's not like 30% of states. I'd say it's something like 80% of states have some type of restriction. I'd say it might be 90% if it's some type of restriction that prevents non-physicians from owning doctors' offices. And the question is, if you are a site, are you engaged? Because you'll see these sites where everything happens at your location. You're going, well, you're basically setting up a doctor's office. I hate to break it to you. And you can't own what you're selling because these guys are often trying to sell sites afterwards. And I go, you can't own what you own. So you're not going to sell it to PE. What exactly is PE going to buy from you? And there are ways to fix it, but they aren't proactively doing it.
Right.
Like that you set up an MSO agreement that helps with it. I had a client who goes, I understand the risks. I want to still go ahead. I've had other situations where sites will go, I want to defray the risk. But I don't want to have an agreement with the doctor because it would upset him, and I don't want him to understand my markup, and I don't, or I just want to set it up so that the doctor gets 30%, or I get 30% of whatever the doctor brings in. I go, that's called a kickback. Or I'll give the doctor X amount of money. Those are kickbacks, and I hate to break it to you. So percentage based doesn't work in most cases, but that's still how you're set up. So those types of things. Just all the issues that people don't realize affects them, comes back to bite them. But this is an example. Is that helpful at all? Is that responsive?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think of the barriers for physicians getting involved in clinical research. Sometimes are even just so simple and basic. I think people like the idea of participating in research, but don't realize how much work it's going to be. And you have to, if you want to do this well, you've got to be fully committed. It has to be, something that is really driving you. And I get the fact that at the beginning, it might be, well, let's see how it goes. And I get that. But at the same time, in order to get there and be ready to start, because the FDA is going to expect you to do everything perfectly from the very first moment you engage in clinical trials. And that's an impossible thing to achieve, but that's the expectation. You have to do your best to try and get to that point where you can do things in compliance. And that's going to take a lot of work. You mentioned the written procedures, totally agree. That's got to be in place. And it's more than just going out and buying somebody's set of written procedures and saying, okay, now we have SOPs. They have to work for your site, or else one of the big things the FDA cites on is not following your own procedures. And you're going to get caught there. The people, the space, you need to have committed sub-investigators, study coordinators. You need considerable space to manage and run a clinical trial. So there's just so many factors. And then once you have everything in place, somehow you've got to convince a sponsor to actually award you a clinical trial. And, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've spent 30 years building up relationships. But somebody new coming in, they don't have those relationships. They don't even know where to start. And so, I honestly think that sponsors need to do more to encourage more physicians to get involved in clinical research. And because there's way too many that are retiring or that have been doing it for a long time and are struggling with recruitment, and we need new people involved in clinical research.
So I have a few different comments. Number one, do you think that's a sponsor problem? The idea of there aren't enough sites. And the reason I say that is, or there aren't enough good sites. The reason I ask that is because if I was a sponsor, I go, I'm coming into this world new myself. I'm not a GSK, I'm not a Pfizer, I'm a small startup. If I'm a small startup, I don't know what I'm doing yet. This might be my first, maybe second product.
Yep.
And I'm going to ask for guidance. I'm going to hire a CRO whose
Right.
job it is to figure that piece out.
Yep.
Why am I investing into setting up an ecosystem that I will go through once, maybe twice? GSK Pfizer maybe has that role, but why is that on me?
Correct. I don't think it's on everybody.
Okay.
I think it is. So if you're a small biotech, you've got one product and you are just entering the clinical trial market and your goal is to get it through phase 2 and sell the drug, then it's going to be very difficult for you to be in a position to help new sites unless you partner with a CRO that has a
Mhm.
program,
Correct.
in which case they may be able to help identify some of the real gems. But the big sponsors, the big biotech, the big sponsors, the sponsors that are committed to being in their therapeutic area, I think it benefits them immensely to have programs in place, have plans in place, engage investigators, and don't just leave it up to the investigators to find their own way
So
because it's so hard.
let's take the Pfizer's and let's take
Yeah,
the GSK's then.
yeah,
And I'd go, look, in many cases, I know you guys are gonna charge me premium dollar. You're gonna come to me and you're gonna go, I want to be part of Pfizer and Lilly and GSK because number one, I could say that, which is great marketing for me when I go to those smaller sponsors. And the truth is that I'm paying top dollar because no one likes to admit this part, but I want those KOLs who are going to then put their names on the studies at the end. And I get to have Dr. Smith, who literally defined the space, who's going to now be a PI in my study. He's not going to do much,
right. And
but
that's the problem.
but I get to have his name in the study,
Right.
which means that I'm really trying to get a contract with Harvard. And Harvard's going to just take me for all I'm worth, but that's okay in the longer term. Because now I have Dr. Smith, who is a really good person to have on my side. Um, the 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 question then becomes if I'm going to be charged premium dollar anyways, and I'm going to get the actual piece of what I want, which is the study name and the author name from a Harvard, and I'm obviously making up names as we go along.
Yeah.
Why am I, as Pfizer or GSK or whatever, responsible for trying to grow a site network or grow a site when that is exactly what you guys should be doing? That's what you guys do. Because you'll charge me for it. It's not like you're going to give me a discount because I'm going to put the money in.
So the reason for that is you still have to get the study done and you have to
Mhm.
recruit in order to get the study done. And that's
Yeah.
great if you're going to have a big name KOL
Mhm.
that you want part of your study. Fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from them, but at the same time, you also have to be able to enroll participants in a study and follow them through and have them complete. And if you're only going to places that have big names and no patients, you'll never get your study done.
So if I really was just going to chase the patients, that's simple. I just go to China because they'll have volumes of patients more than someone in the US.
Maybe, maybe not, because it
Uh-huh.
depends on one, what is the requirements of the FDA
Mhm.
and what do they want as far as where the patients are coming from and how many or what percentage of those patients they want to be in their specified countries or in the US.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you want to, as a pharmaceutical company, be building long term relationships with the physicians who see your and handle and participate in your clinical trials, because that's an immense knowledge that they gain on what the compound looks like, feels like, what how it works when you're actually seeing patients. And that's important information for companies to learn and have those connections long term.
So I'd actually agree with 100% what you said. I'm playing devil's advocate,
That's
but
okay. Fire away, man.
no, but two different comments. So number one, I think it's more than that. I think it's also the fact that in the end, the people who are going to prescribe your drug are the
Yep.
physicians you're talking to right now.
Hmm.
So if you decide that those are not the people you want to focus on,
Right.
um, it doesn't work out in the long term for you anyway. So that it's great to have your KOL be the person being the author, and that's going to happen one way or the other. But in the longer term, you still need to get people who understand your product. And that's why you used to have, or theoretically still have, seeding trials where people are just getting used to using the product and understanding how it works. And I hope it doesn't happen because that's not in the best interest of patients. Having said all of that, we usually aim for these to be about 30-minute conversations. And we're at 35. So time goes very quickly.
It does.
It does mean that we get to have another conversation about this pretty soon because it's
That'd be
a
fun.
great conversation. Any part? Before we go, please, for everyone else, check out the QR code that's on the top and go to Probity Medical Research. Talk to Ted.
Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. Talk to Ted. And if you want to talk to me, this is my QR code. And feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you a little bit further about some of the issues that sites face from a legal perspective. But before we go, Ted, any parting words for new PIs, new physicians who are considering research?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one thing I would say is running a clinical trial site isn't just medicine. It's medicine, compliance, logistics, IT, HR, accounting, legal, all rolled into one. And the second thing I'd say is starting a clinical trial site is hard, but when you do it right, it becomes one of the most rewarding things a physician can do. So if you're out there and you're looking either to grow your clinical trial site or get into clinical trials, reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to have a chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you all, and stay tuned. We're going to have Ted back because obviously we just started this conversation.
Amazing. Thanks, Darshan.